I take credit.
No, it didn't. But it didn't come. It didn't come out.
Yeah, I know he would rather. Well, sometimes I feel
Well, he was a great mentor. He was the one you could go to. I wish I had gone more and sooner. Stuff they don't teach in seminary.
yeah, I used to say, well, he's the rabbi's rabbi.
And the doctor's doctor. And I know that there were nurses who would be in the operating room, but whenever they needed surgery, it had to be him. And wait for him to come back from vacation. So the doctor got
Well, he was not a yeller. Other people.
no, but he was. Yeah, well, it's just what
Took care of her.
So, let's see. So you'll just tell us what to do.
yeah, you'll just come up all three of you. We've been asked to make an announcement to turn off your cell phones, watches, things that go beep in the night. Adonai, you are my shepherd. I shall not want, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You guide me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadows, I fear no evil, for you are with me. With rod and staff you comfort me. With rod and staff you comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows, my cup overflows. Yes, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I will dwell in your house, Adonai, Adonai, forever.
In this hour of loss, We listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures, which bring us the ancient yet ever new message of God's nearness. They tell us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. The 121st Psalm. I lift my eyes to the mountain. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, from this time forth and forevermore. And from the book of Ecclesiastes. To everything there's a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot that which is planted. A time to slay, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to grieve, and a time to dance. A time to throw stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to discard. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silent, and a time to speak.
O God of life, amid the ceaseless tides of change which sweep away the generations, your love remains to comfort us and to give us hope. Around us are life and death, decay and renewal, the flowing rhythm of all things that all must obey. Our life is a dance to a song we cannot hear. Its melody courses through us for a little while, then seems to cease. Whence the melody and whither does it go? In darkness as in light, we turn to you, the source of life, and the answer to all its mysteries. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. What can we know of life, we who cannot understand? What can we know of death, we who cannot understand life? We study the seed and the cell, but the power deep within them will always elude us. Though we cannot understand, we accept life as the gift of God, yet death, life's twin, we often face with fear. But why be afraid? Death is a haven to the weary, a relief for the sorely afflicted. We are safe in death as in life. There is no pain in death. There is only the pain of the living as we recall shared loved ones and as we ourselves fear to die. Calm us, O God, when we cry out in our fear and our grief. Turn us anew toward life. Awaken us to the warmth of human love that speaks to us of you. We shall fear no evil as we affirm your dominion of life.
The challenge of death is the struggle to create something good and enduring out of life. Albert Einstein once said, "How extraordinary is the situation of us mortals. Each of us is here for a brief sojourn, for what purpose we know not, though we sometimes think we sense it. But without going deeper than our daily life, it's plain that we exist for our fellow human beings. In the first place, for those upon whose smiles and welfare our happiness depends, and next for all those unknown to us personally, but whose destinies we are bound with a tie of sympathy. 100 times every day I remind myself that my inner and outer life depends on the labors of other people, living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the measure as I have received, and am still receiving it. It's often said that we live on in the memories of those whose lives we touch most deeply. I believe that, but I also believe that we live on in more than just memories. Each of our lives is like a stone skipping across the clear pool of life, until slowly we glide beneath the surface and become one with the water below. We may never know how far or wide the ripples of our life will travel, but the very fact of our existence changes the surface of our world forever. The challenge of life is to live with the knowledge of death, to know that someday too our life will end. When we pay tribute to those we've touched in our lives, they live on in more than just our memory, but in the measure of goodness which we continue to do on their behalf. Somehow they've shaped us into the kind of people who care about those around us. They live on in more than our memories because they've helped us to become who we are, and now they're part of everything that we do. At this solemn time of remembrance, we call to mind Leonard Goddy, who shaped our lives and sparked within us the flame of remembrance. Let us think not only of who he was, but also of who he helped us to become. May we honor his death through the deeds of our life. May he live on within us forever.
I'd like to invite Leonard's 3 children, David, Karen, and Suzanne, to share some words with us about their father. Beautiful words. Oops.
Hi. Well, we wanted to take up as much time as we could, saying as much as we were able to. So that's what we're going to do. So thank you, everybody, for being here to share this day with us. We're here to mourn, but we're also here to appreciate, to celebrate, and be joyous for the love and the loyalty our father gave his family and his friends and his patients. So I welcome you on behalf of our family, my sisters Karen and Suzanne, their husbands Kai and Bruce, and my partner Sissy, Dad's grandchildren, Sonia, Julian, Alec, Jordan, Adam, and Jillian. They're all here. The only grandchild who couldn't be here today is my daughter Sonia, who's 8 months pregnant. So Dad almost made it to being a great-grandfather. Our aunts, Susan and Izzy, and so many of Dad's nieces and nephews and our cousins. We're really glad you're here. So it's fitting that we're here in this beautiful chapel and building, which we all called Leonard's Temple, right? Because it was. So Dad was president of Adith Israel in the late 70s when he and other leaders decided that to stay vibrant, they needed to leave the beautiful historic sanctuary downtown. I remember going up and down the stairs all the time, and go where younger people were moving. So first they moved with Brit Shalom, which required assuring the Brit Shalom people that they would not get swallowed up in a larger congregation. Then Dad set to work to raise support for the design and the construction of this building, appealing to high-minded moral consciousness, as well as twisting more than a few arms. So he and Lynn really loved this congregation. As a young couple new to town, at their very first Yom Kippur, at the old sanctuary, Dr. Waller greeted them and invited them to sit in the front row. Now, of course, probably the front row was empty, right? So we remember Dr. Waller very, very well, and know and appreciate very deeply Rabbi Diamond. So Dad graduated from U of L Medical School in 1958. He started his practice in 1963. His training introduced him to classmates and others who would become lifelong friends of my parents, a few of whom are here. So among them, Ronnie and Sonia Levine, Norton and Judy Waterman, Arnold and Terry Belker. Marty Margulis was not a doctor, but he acted like one. And Maury Weiss, who was Dad's cardiologist until his own retirement earlier this year. And sometimes when I accompanied Dad to appointments with Maury, I wondered if Maury stayed in practice, just to look after Dad. Okay, Karen.
Dad started his practice when he was 30. When the banks would not accept his out-of-state father or father-in-law as co-signers for a loan to get started, Norton Waterman stepped up to help. Dad had a young family to support. David was 7, I was 4, and Suzanne was a year away. Dad was lucky. He had Lynn as his partner. Not only did she design his office, but she was also his marketing department. As he traveled from hospital to hospital, drinking coffee in the doctor's lounges, Lynn would call each hospital in turn to have him paged, so other doctors would hear his name and think he was busy and call him for a consultation. One of our favorite stories from that time was how he first gained a reputation as an expert on children's orthopedic problems. Children's Hospital had a vexing problem. Far too many of their infants had weak or broken bones. Dad had been called in for an infant fracture, and in frustration, they asked the young doctor for help. He said, "They're not getting vitamin D." They said, "But we are giving them vitamin D." And he said, "Then you're not giving them the right kind of vitamin D." Children's Hospital started giving infants vitamin D3, and the problem cleared up quickly. Research on the effectiveness of vitamin D3 versus vitamin D2 had just started to be published in the early to mid-60s. And after that, Dad had many consults at Children's Hospital as he could handle. Tom Loeb, one of Dad's partners, had said, "Leonard loved taking care of kids. We ran 2 weekly pediatric clinics, one at the downtown Children's Hospital and one at the Kosair Hospital on Eastern Parkway. These were basically free clinics serving the less fortunate. Many children came from families with little or no insurance, and we donated any reimbursement. 20% of our entire practice was dedicated to serving or to caring for the underserved children." Also, Dad was an outstanding surgeon of great skill, creativity, and efficiency. Before surgery, he would review the case and plan his approach, often sketching 3D angles and rotations on paper placed over the 2-dimensional X-rays on a light table. He delighted in completing difficult surgeries much more rapidly than his peers, and more importantly, reducing the time needed for anesthesia. He also was a remarkable astute diagnostician, even or perhaps especially conducting a history and exam over the phone. Anyone in our extended family was injured or had a recurrent problem, they called Dad. In retirement, he advised quite a few of our friends on prospective complex surgeries, reviewing their x-rays and telling them what questions they should ask their surgeons and what answers they should not accept. "You can delay surgery," he said, "but you can't take it back after it's done." He also liked to say, "Minor surgery is surgery on other people." No discussion of Dad as a doctor would be complete without his experience in Vietnam, the source of many of his wonderful stories. He was drafted in 1967 at the age of 34. In those days, doctors could be drafted up to the age of 35. His practice was thriving. Our parents had just built a new house, and they now had 3 kids. Suzanne was 3. The first year we spent in Pennsylvania, close to the large Army hospital at Valley Forge. Then next year, Dad went to Vietnam, and Lynn and the 3 of us returned to Louisville, waiting for him to come home. A lieutenant colonel, he served at the 8th Field Hospital in Nha Trang, where he did his best to repair the terrible damage war inflicts on the human body, regardless of which side of the conflict that body belongs to. The experience also gave him experience with a wide variety of traumatic injuries that most orthopedists never acquire. When the commanding officer of Army Special Forces badly broke his leg on a parachute jump, Dad saved his command by treating him in country rather than sending him back to the States. The CO made Dad an honorary Green Beret, and he still has it.
Which Dad liked to wear around the house.
Okay. The best appreciation of Dad came from his younger patients. Here's an excerpt from a handwritten letter Dad received in 1994. Dear Dr. Goddy, do you remember me? My name is Nicole Spady. My hip has a disease inside of it called leg cavipathies. This is a rare condition that affects 1 out of 12,000 children and is 5 times more rare among girls than boys. I like you a lot more than any of my other doctors. You know a little of what it's like to have a disease. You're a great doctor because you are nice and great with people. I feel kind of close to you. I think you know your stuff very well. Almost every 6 months, I come to the clinic. I think you know a lot more than other doctors because one doctor said I was playing a trick with my hip. How stupid. Sincerely, Nicole Spady. Now we want to talk about Dad as a son, partner, father, and grandfather. Dad's grandparents came to the United States from Lithuania and Russia. The family name was Yagoda, which somehow got changed to Goddy. His paternal and maternal grandparents were peddlers and manual laborers. They were working poor, just an injury away from hunger. His parents were Abe Goddy and Jeanette Feynman Goddy. Everyone called her by her Jewish name, Shanky. Shanky was a stern but adoring mother to Dad and his younger sister, Carol, and later a bit less stern but equally adoring of her grandchildren. She smoked Lucky Strikes and lived into her 80s. When she was diagnosed with heart disease, she asked Dad what she could do. He told her to give up smoking. You never told me that before, she said. You never asked, Dad answered, and I didn't dare tell you to stop doing what you liked. Dad's relationship with Abe gives some insight into his parenting. Abe was a loving but difficult father for Dad, sometimes distant, often critical. A bright boy who skipped several grades in school, Abe gave up his formal education before he was a teenager to support his family because his father could no longer work. After he married, Abe was a stop insurance salesman. Stop. And I'm like, what's a stop insurance salesman? Anyway, you need stop insurance. Anyway, a top insurance salesman, but could not advance because he was a Jew. He started a diaper service, tried other businesses, then ran a bar near the mills. In middle age, he and Shanky finally achieved financial security when he took over a business that supplied cigarettes for vending machines. However, Abe died in his 60s before he and Dad had a chance to draw closer. Dad met Lynn at Big Eagle, a Jewish summer camp in Zionsville, Indiana. not far from where Lynn's family lived on a farm outside of Indianapolis. They both were in college. He was the waterfront director and she a lead counselor. The summer after they both graduated, she told her friends she was going back to Big Eagle to marry Leonard Goddy. And here's the punchline to a very sweet story. He asked her to go steady. She said no. He asked her to get pinned. She said no. He asked her to get engaged. She said no. He asked her to marry. She said yes. When? They married that August. They had a 2-day honeymoon to Chicago and moved to Louisville, where Dad entered medical school and Lynn taught first grade. David was born 10 months later. Dad worked hard. For years, his typical day was to get up at 5:30, go to the JCC to swim, and then get down to the hospital to start surgery by 7 or 8 a.m. He would do multiple cases through the morning, then go to his office to see patients. Late afternoon, he made rounds at the hospital. He'd come home for dinner, write Suzanne's essays, and then a few hours later, the emergency room would call and he would be off again to the hospital. As his practice grew, Dad had more time with Karen and a bit more with Suzanne, and he played a lot of golf with David. We are so very lucky to have him as a father. He never made you feel that you were not important, no matter how busy he was or what patient or meeting he had when you called. He had a strong ethical core and was very much a patriarchal figure. He was fiercely loyal, unswervingly supportive, and not judgmental. Well, not too judgmental. He was devoted to Lynn and relied on her to take care of everything, kids, the house, vacations, and she wrote the checks. I don't remember ever seeing he and Lynn argue, and I'm sure they did, but not in front of us.
Okay. One image I have of Dad from later, when I was a teenager. So I remember me being up late and Dad coming back to the house, coming back from the hospital. He poured himself a scotch. He pulled a volume of the Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus from the shelf, and he read till he wound down enough to go to sleep. Now, so maybe he was just striking a pose for my benefit. I was very impressed, but it worked. Lynn's father died at the age of 58, and Dad became a very important father figure and mentor for Susan and Izzy and many people in our extended family, and also not in family. He delighted in his grandchildren. He was proud of each of you for who you are, and he learned to try to not tell you what he thought you should do. He quelled at your development and your accomplishments. When Lynn started to decline and gradually withdrew from activities that required a high degree of executive function skills, he stepped up to maintain their active social life. When Lynn presented, he organized their travel. He even took over much of running the house, not that well. When Lynn presented with full-blown Lewy body dementia, and it took months even to get an accurate diagnosis, he did everything he knew to get her the best care and to keep her as comfortable as possible at home until the end. Dad's own gradual decline over the past 4 years was difficult, but also, paradoxically, a long-last bequest of his love to Donna and to us, his children and his grandchildren. For such a masterful, independent, physically vigorous person, it's striking how he came to accept his diminishment with equanimity. He loved nothing better than to see, talk to, and think about his children and grandchildren. He became an extraordinary teller of detailed stories about his life. And when he wavered on the details, the music of the stories remained a lovely melody. His last years brought us all closer together, both to him and among ourselves. Now, I'm going to skip back because I think I jumped over a section in the beginning. So, we want to thank Dad's compassionate caregivers led by Veronica Porter. Veronica, you kept Dad going with the very finest care and became a true friend as well as an appreciative expert on his humor and his stories. And you too, Rita and Jenny. Okay. We also want to especially acknowledge and honor our father's partner of the past decade, Donna Stone. Donna's children are represented by her daughter, Elizabeth, here. Donna wrote a new chapter of life and enjoyment for Leonard after the pain of our mother, Lynn's illness and passing. Donna, your love and companionship made Leonard so very, very happy. He loved you, and we love you. In his last months and longer, Dad said over and over again how lucky he was. Lucky in his children, lucky in the women in his life, lucky in his work. He really appreciated the gift of his life. So his memory is a blessing for us. So we're done.
How do you create a beautiful life? Look around and you will see. This chapel that Leonard helped to build, filled with his precious family, his cherished friends, respected members of the medical profession, patients who always knew how very much he cared. And these quilts that were donated by Leonard and Lynn. For almost a half a century, they did more than just beautify this sanctified space. They were the ark doors that opened and closed on every Sabbath and festival service. And inside the ark were these quilts, so beautiful, that matched, that encircled the Torahs, the sacred scrolls of our people, Torahs that are passed down from generation to generation. They represent the secret of Leonard's life. Each piece of fabric lovingly stitched to create a magnificent offering of a life well lived. Leonard chose the shapes and patterns of his life with dedication and precision, placing them with a surgeon's skill to make something extraordinary. Of course, not all pieces of the quilt of life can be chosen. Some are handed to us. Leonard showed us that what you do with what you are given, the good and the bad, is what makes the difference. Accepting the hard times, finding ways to piece them into the quilt of life with meaning and faith, creates a legacy of stitches that leaves behind a masterpiece of a life well lived. What remains is love and service, memories and meaning, lifelong lessons of strength and gentleness, love and legacy, leadership and commitment, all stitched together with an abiding passion. The imprint of a precious soul that lasts far beyond time. At this time, we listen to the words of the El Maleh Rachamim, a prayer that is our way of affirming that Leonard's life was more than the sum of his days upon this earth. In faith, we entrust the spirit of this loving man to the one who is beyond time and space, in whose loving presence we all find our abiding home, and in whose being each good life finds its completion. The psalmist wrote, "Dust returns to dust, the spirit returns to God who gave it." Please rise for the memorial prayer. El mלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. אם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת יקירנו, שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום, בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר Amen. O God, full of compassion, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Leonard Goddy, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God, you are his inheritance. May he rest in peace.
The traditions of the Kaddish are mysterious. Angels are said to have brought it down from heaven. It possesses wonderful power. Truly, if there's any bond strong enough to chain heaven to earth, it is this prayer. It keeps the living together and forms a bridge to the mysterious realm of the dead. One might almost say that this prayer is the guardian of the people by whom alone it is uttered. Therein lies the warrant of its continuance. Can a people disappear or be annihilated so long as a child remembers its parents? Because this prayer does not acknowledge death, because it permits the blossom which has fallen from the tree of humankind to flower and develop again in the human heart, therefore it possesses sanctifying power. Please join me in these words of Kaddish. Yitkadav v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, Balma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'mechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulmei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei d'kudusha b'richu, le'lo min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shloma Rabbah min shemaya v'chaim, alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Hosei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen.
Our service will continue graveside at the temple, at Assurance Cemetery. At the temple, that was yesterday. Our service will continue at the temple cemetery, and then David, Karen, and Suzanne and the rest of the family will be sitting Shiva this evening from 5 until 7. There'll be a meal of consolation that's at Leonard's home, which is 1212 Park Hills Drive in Seneca Park. And the minyan, the memorial service, will be at 7 o'clock. So everyone is invited to come then. Donna will also be with us then, as is appropriate. And on behalf of Donna and the whole family, I'd like to thank everyone very much for coming. I'm sure it means a great deal to them. would do it at the cemetery.
You need to call there or not?